All right, so let's look at presenting the budget as far as a PowerPoint presentation per se. Again, the structure of the presentation will really depend on what the governing body is expecting. We need to think about things like past approaches and if there's any specific focus of the leadership as far as the CEO or the board of directors. The purpose is to orient the decision makers to the critical issues of the budget. So we're going to look at plans for the future, positive impacts on the community, and anything that your supervisor, not put CEO here, but anything your supervisor asks you to focus on relative to the budget itself. So the first thing I would say is you have to know your audience and you want to tailor the presentation to that audience. So think about this. What do I want the final presentation to look like for my audience? We want to focus on like the structure and creating understanding both. So you want to make sure that they can follow along with the structure, they can understand what you're talking about. And some of that includes speaking at their knowledge level. So if you're speaking to folks that are a little bit more attuned with budgets, you can include more of the jargon as far as the budgeting process. If you're thinking if you're presenting to a different audience, you may want to rethink the words you use and how you structure your presentation. So one thing that I like to think of when I do a presentation is think about the big picture. When they leave your presentation or whatever, it's a budget presentation or otherwise, what do you want them to do as far as the whole picture goes? Do you want them to understand everything about your organization, everything about your budget, or do you want them to understand a certain specific thing about it? So we need to think about the whole picture as far as our presentation goes. And next, we want to think about the end in mind. So as we start our presentation, think about what our end goal would be. So what I like to do with my presentations is create an outline on paper that goes along while I'm while I'm developing the presentation, and think about the end goal. What is the end goal? When you say thank you, have a great day, I'll see you later, I'm here to answer any questions, things like that. What do you want them to be able to ask? What do you want them to take with them and stuff like that? So let's go over some tips for effective presentations, and we'll have a few of these. Number one, you want to engage your audience. So that's the whole point of a presentation. It's not to get up there and read a book or read from your slides. You want to engage your audience. And remember that decision makers with the budget, key stakeholders with the budget, and others, they may be completely different audiences altogether. So you need to think about how to engage them differently. You want to consider a separate presentation tailored to each of them if possible. So that may not include giving certain information, and it's not like we're trying to hide anything here, but you want to give them the information that they can digest, right? A lot of times, the decision makers want to know the final lines of the budget, whereas the stakeholders want to know what's in it for them. If you're presenting to the community, what do I get out of this? This is money, but what's coming out of it? And then you want to make sure as you're going through that you're guiding your audience through your presentation. Be mindful of their knowledge and their time and their commitment to the budget process. So, one audience may have a lot of time and commitment and understanding of the budget process, and another one may not. And then finally, you want to make sure that you have visual aspects to your presentation so it supports your presentation, but you don't want to make your presentation all about your visuals. If presentation is you, the visuals as far as the PowerPoint or the presentation is up there to help guide you as the presenter. When we think about the structure of the presentation, we want to make sure font sizes should be easy to read from all angles and distances. So you need to know your room size, the projector size, and stuff like that. You want to use font types that are easy to read. So think about the normal type fonts or ask people, look at this, is that font easy to read or not? Any graphics you use are to support your text and improve retention of the text. They should relate somehow to the presentation. They are not supposed to take away from the presenter or the presentation. They're supposed to support it and emphasize it. You want to make sure you use bullet points and not paragraphs. And these bullet points need to focus on key items and let you do the elaboration. And finally, you need to keep the background simple. Remember, this is a presentation where the information is coming from you and the text behind you on the projection is to support you. So keep the background simple, much like this slide you're looking at right now. Your style and design throughout your presentation should be consistent. You want to try to keep that as minimal as possible as far as moving from one style or one design. Sometimes it's necessary, right? But you want to keep that minimal. I like to pick a design and then use it across the board and then make adjustments from there. You want to keep to one transition style. So, as you can see, as these presentations flip, there's one transition style from one to the next. I don't try to get crazy and do anything unique or random or anything like that. Graphs and tables should be easily presented and understandable. You want to make sure that whatever is up there can be easily digested by anybody in the room. Usually bar charts are the easiest to understand. And pie charts are used, and they're okay, but pie charts are okay, but bar charts are the best. And you want to make sure you carefully label all the tables and charts so that the name and the key to the chart is easy to understand. A few more tips. Always practice. I would practice in front of folks that you know, practice in front of some folks that will ask you questions. Practice in front of a mirror where you're looking at yourself. The more comfortable you are with the material, the easier things will go. You want to avoid doing little things like scratching your nose, putting your hands on your hips, these little idiosyncrasies that people mention. Sometimes people will record themselves giving the presentation, and you can kind of pick up on those. Think about who's going to control the visual presentation and rehearse for them. So if this is you with a clicker, that's one thing, and those wireless clickers are getting a little bit more popular, so you can control it back and forth. Remember that the B key on keyboard blanks the screen. And you want to practice with this a little bit. So if you need, for any reason, you just need to blank the screen. And so while you're talking, or if you want to block something while there's a little bit of discussion, whatever it may be, that's a helpful hint as well. So our final slide of tips is keep the lights on. So you don't want to turn all the lights off and create that mood lighting or whatever you want to call it. You want to have your presentation done where you can keep the lights on and still see everything. You will need to be prepared to walk away from the podium, so don't use the podium as an anchor. Understand and know your material well enough that you can walk around a little bit, and make sure you make eye contact with different folks as you do that. And finally, you want to show some passion. And this isn't, you don't want to get too crazy with this, but show that you're connected to this material and you care about it overall. That makes a good presentation. And that includes our presentation structuring and tips for a good presentation.